Hello and welcome. My name is Meepolis, they, he, she, and today's pick is Movements and Moments, an anthology edited by Sonja Eismann, Maya Schöningh, and Ingo Schöningh. Apologies for my undoubtedly atrocious pronunciation throughout this video. Published by Drawn and Quarterly in 2022. Quote, an ambitious feminist anthology chronicling indigenous rebellions around the world. This project was undertaken in cooperation with the Goethe Institute Indonesia in Jakarta. These stories were selected from an open call across 42 countries to spotlight feminist movements and advocacies in the global south, end quote. Another one of those books I saw on the new acquisition page at my library. TLDR, I was really impressed. Content notes for torture, nudity, state violence, child brides, colonization, and essay. Keywords that came to mind: all our relations, expressive style, indigenous languages and cultures, water, personal stories, community, and coming of age. The summary over on Goodreads is, quote, in 1930s Bolivia, self-described anarchist Cholas form a libertarian trade union. In the northern highlands of Vietnam, the songs of one girl's youth lead her to a life of activism. In the Philippines, female elders from Kalinga blaze a trail when pushed into impromptu protest. Equally striking accounts from Brazil, Chile, Ecuador, India, Nepal, Peru, and Thailand weave a tapestry of trauma and triumph, shedding a light on not too distant histories otherwise overlooked. Indigenous people all over the world have always had to stand their ground in the face of colonialism. While the details may differ, what these stories have in common is their commitment to resistance in a world that puts profit over respect, and Western notions of progress before their own. Movements and Moments is an introductory glimpse into how indigenous peoples tell these stories in their own words. From Southeast Asia to South America, vibrant communities must grapple with colonial realities to assert ownership of their lands and traditions, end quote. Looking at the collection of stories overall, as I already mentioned, I was pretty impressed by the caliber of contributions and the quality of the publication overall. The art for the anthology was charismatic and colorful, not to mention highly developed and expressive. Overall, looking at the writing, each story did a pretty good job of covering movements I'm pretty sure are not very well known in a way that felt relatable and accessible, although I feel like a book could be dedicated to each one of them. This is certainly just the jumping off point. Many did include bibliographies, notes, and profiles of important people as well. Themes that wove a lot of these individual narratives together, as the summary suggests, were extermination of indigenous cultures, genocide, dams causing environmental and cultural damage in the name of, quote, clean energy, and the exploitation of workers. Quote, according to a global analysis made by the NGO Frontline Defenders in 2019, environmental activism is the most dangerous occupation in Latin America. This region is the most likely to criminalize indigenous activism and is also the region in which an indigenous activist is most likely to be murdered. Their murders are also the most likely to go unpunished. A report from 2020 indicates that 69% of activists killed that year defended the environment, the rights of indigenous people, and their right to land, end quote. Hitting the highlights of our creative teams, we start off strong with Let the River Flow Free, Women Defenders of the Cordillera, which was written by Gantala Press, founded in 2015. They are a Filipina press run entirely by volunteers. With art by Nina Martinez, also of Metro Manila. She is apparently set to earn her MFA in illustration from the Rhode Island School of Design this year, and formerly worked at the Rappler during the Duterte regime. Next, we had Mama Dulu with story and art by Citlalli, Andrango, and Cecilia, Larrea, both Ecuadorian creatives. The former is an actress and producer, the latter is a political illustrator. Additionally, translation work was completed by Renata, Duque. This one felt like it dipped its toe into a bit of genre caricature, a fun twist in my humble opinion, in choosing to depict the Christian leaders as cartoon vampires. Then we had Shanti Beyond the Veil by Bandana Tulachan, co-founder of a comics platform for artists in Nepal called Varangana Comics. A solid critique of those who give and take child brides. My only complaint about this is not really a critique, but a general frustration that as an American, this is almost exclusively seen as a problem that happens in those other places. This could not be further from the case, and many Republican lawmakers have resisted laws that would outlaw the practice, which is still fairly common in many parts of my country. Next up, The Anarchist Cholas, a short story about a Bolivian female libertarian trade union. Story and art by Vanessa, Penuela, and Cesar, Vargas, described on the Institute's website as, quote, two visual artists from Bogota, Colombia, interested in political, social, and historical issues that are related to the Latin American and Caribbean reality. Lately, they have paid attention to gender issues concerning Latin American women with respect to factors of race and social class. On this comic, they worked with drawing assistant Jeisson Cortes and translator Felipe Pachon, which I thought was a very interesting look at some very uniquely creative community organizing. Then we had Tracing Between Colors of the Highlands by Hùng, a translator and writer. He co-founded an independent press that, quote, seeks to connect Vietnam to the global literary scene, and Pham Thu Tra, a Hanoi-based illustrator whose work, quote, focuses mainly on the Anthropocene and flaws that make humans intrinsically fascinating, end quote. Next up was Milare Hushilov, The Protectress of the Sacred River by Greta Di Girolamo and Consuelo Terra, both feminist journalists. Greta is also a widely published comics creator. I appreciated the centering of a disabled narrator and the way they pointed out the colonizing power of Protestant Christianity. Second to last, we had Warmi Masi, Andean Feminism Taking Shape in the Land of the Incas by Helen Quinones Loaiza, a communicator and interpreter of native languages, and Trilce Garcia Cosovalante, a graphic designer and illustrator who believes mediums like comics can create positive social change. I appreciated the way it shows indigenous culture as a thing for the modern age and not just something of the past. Finally, we had Times Will Pass, a vibrant and queer comic by Shanti Narayanan, a trans woman who works in mural storytelling and teaching, and Sadhna Prasad, an illustrator and muralist whose work, quote, explores stories and narratives by showcasing stereotypes, women, the everyday, and colors through traditional Indian art form, end quote. I'll put a link in the description to the Institute's website where you can find the comics in their original languages. Across this collection, I felt there was a diversity of foci that hit on all the intersecting identities that I try to highlight in each review. There was also a diversity of political persuasions and angles. Wrapping things up, I will just repeat for a third time that I was pretty blown away by this collection, not only in its substance but also its execution, and would highly recommend. 5 stars. Bye y'all, keep reading, and remember all colonial settler states are a lie. And Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, an Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.